What is going on, my fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks, the weekly pop culture podcast from Central Michigan Life, where we discuss all things geek culture, which is like high culture, but better. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you follow the CM Life Instagram and Twitter pages for updates on the podcast, and look for us wherever you find your podcasts, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our website at www.cm-life.com. My name is Brendan Valentine, and I would like to thank you all for joining me and my fellow co-hosts this week, who will introduce themselves in a second with our question of the week. This week, since it is officially February, I would just like to ask both of you, do you have any plans for Valentine's Day?
Isaac Hunter here, by the way. My girlfriend and I don't really celebrate Valentine's Day that much, but I will be celebrating my niece's birthday, so that's fun.
I have
Snaps
to
for
ask,
that.
Isaac, when is your niece's birthday?
Her birthday is the 13th, but we're celebrating it the 14th.
I have to ask because, well, I'm a single Pringle. Not that you would ever eat Pringles single, but you know. And they're always in a can, so I don't know why you would leave just a single Pringle in a can. Anyways, off topic. Sorry. My niece's birthday is on the 15th, so the day after Valentine's Day. So that is most likely what we're going to be doing on Valentine's Day, is celebrating her birthday. So
what do you know?
yeah.
Oh,
Niece's
and
Day.
who are you that just
sorry.
introduced themselves?
Yeah, sorry. My name is Hope Gooderl, and I am co-host today.
Perfect. Thank you very much for introducing yourselves. Me personally, I currently don't have any plans for Valentine's Day, but seeing as my last name is Valentine, I have to figure something out. It's the law. I have to have some sort of plans, whether it's like the typical like date type of stuff, probably not because pandemic, but I have to figure something out.
You could
also,
watch FBI, because there's a character on there whose name is Jubal Valentine. So
I could also watch Victorious because Ariana Grande's character is Cat Valentine.
You could drive the snakes from Ireland like the original Saint Valentine.
Isn't that St. Patrick?
Oh, wait, yeah, you're right. Now I'm embarrassed.
Dang it. Wrong holiday.
I think Saint Valentine got his head cut off.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
I believe he did.
Yes.
But also on the subject of birthdays, my older sister, whose last name is also Valentine, was born on February 15th as well. So that one's really fun.
Yeah.
We always say that, a few hours sooner would have been much preferred. But all right, before we get into our main topic of the day, which explains why our question was so not geeky today, we'd like to go over some geek news. Isaac or Hope, either of you want to start?
I have 3 pieces of information today. So on the day that we are recording this episode, on the 4th, there is a new film coming out tomorrow that's being released in select theaters, as well as on demand, and it's called Son of the South, and it stars Lucas Till, Cedric the Entertainer, Lucy Hale, Jake Abel, Dexter Darden, and a whole lot of other people, and it's from producer Spike Lee, and it's based on the true story of a Klansman's grandson who has to choose which side of the civil rights movement he's going to be on in Montgomery, Alabama during the civil rights movement. So I'm really excited for that one. I've been excited for a while because I'm a big fan of Lucas Till. Also, Cedric the Entertainer is a phenomenal African-American actor, and I love him as well. Also, if you have been impatiently waiting for the Wicked musical movie to be coming out, it was announced that John M. Chu is going to be directing the movie adaptation, and he also directed Crazy Rich Asians and the movie musical In the Heights, which is a Lin-Manuel Miranda musical. So, hey, Wicked fans, we have a director for our movie. We're one step closer.
Woot woot.
And then my final piece of information is that CW has released all of the shows that are renewed. So we've got All American for season 4, Batwoman for season 3, Charmed for season 4, In the Dark for season 4, Nancy Drew for season 3, Roswell, New Mexico, season 4, Riverdale, season 6, Walker, season 2, Dynasty, season 5, Flash, season 8, Legacy, season 4, and DC's Legend of Tomorrow, season 7. They've all been renewed, so we get to look forward to those.
Interesting. That's really early, especially really timely, seeing as we did a CW episode last week. But anything on Superman and Lois? I know they haven't premiered that one yet, but are they kind of keeping quiet on whether they're planning a season 2?
I think they're keeping quiet because it hasn't come out yet. And they might do like a Super Bowl promo, or at least like release one on YouTube because, Super Bowl is really stupid expensive for commercials. But also that reminds me, we are supposed to be getting a new Falcon and Winter Soldier trailer on the Super Bowl. So this coming Sunday. And I believe they're also releasing Black Widow, a new trailer for that, and possibly something for WandaVision or one of their other shows that's coming out on Disney Plus. So I'm super
Disney Plus
excited.
is going crazy on the ads for everything. Like, as much as I love seeing new ads, I'm like, don't spoil everything, please. Isaac, have you got anything for us?
I don't have any new nerd news, I suppose, but it is Black History Month, so you could go and learn something about Black history associated with nerd culture, and maybe support some Black businesses, artists, or content creators.
Yes.
Great idea. For my front on Geek News, Thor: Love and Thunder set photos got released since we last met up, which did confirm that the Guardians of the Galaxy will be making an appearance in Thor: Love and Thunder. Specifically, Nebula has a new Phase 4 outfit, and it looks like Kraglin is making an appearance and will be a member of the Guardians as of Thor: Love and Thunder and Guardians 3.
Oh, yes.
I know, very excited just to see how everything works with his new toy after that he received in Guardians 2. Also, Disney Plus did announce new titles that will be coming to the platform in February. Some notable titles, throwbacks to my childhood, was the Disney XD show Pair of Kings will be making an appearance on Disney Plus, and a really old throwback that I forgot about. But Jake Long, American Dragon, will be coming to Disney Plus later this month. And I thought that was really cool because I haven't watched that show or heard anything about that since it got, I don't know if it was canceled or what, but since it stopped airing back in 2007 or something like that. It was
two
old.
seasons too.
I know.
When I saw that it only had 2 seasons, I was like, what? No, this show, it needs more seasons. So, if we can get all the little kids to watch Jake Long, American Dragon, can we get more seasons on that? Disney, I'm calling you out right now. Give us more seasons.
Or a straight up reboot, depending on a new season / reboot if they're going to do something like that.
Yeah, reboot still with Dante Bosco.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they can get the voice actors back, then I say new season. But if they can't, then I might be fine with a reboot. Depends. My last bit of news is today a new trailer dropped for the DC animated movie Justice Society World War II. I'm a big fan of the DC animated movie universe. There's 2 distinct different DC animated movie universes, but this is the part of the era of the new ones that have come out since Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. And I don't know what its relation is because I'm not caught up on. That's the last one I watched in that lineage. So if there's any relation, I'm not sure, but that'd be really cool. Seeing as the end of Justice League Dark Apocalypse War was the Flash was very important, and the Flash is very important in Justice Society World War II as it seems to be from the trailer. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
All right. So that is it for our geek news today. And then kind of returning to our opening question, since it is the month of February and when this episode is released, it will be about a week until Valentine's Day. But as geeks, that romantic holiday is overshadowed by something we here at Raving Geeks consider to be much more important, and that would be Valentine's Day. As Hope has adequately named it here in our discussion chats and stuff. So today on the podcast, we're just going to be talking about some of our favorite villains, what makes a good villain, and stuff like that. Bad guys all around. So breathe like Darth Vader, put on your helmets, wear your cape, flap your wings, whatever your favorite villain does. Relax and let's go. So, first question that we have to pose is, what makes a good villain? Like, what characteristics makes one stand out? What through lines do you see in some of your favorite villains, or is there one thing that you can say that makes a good villain, or is it the variety that counts?
I would say something that is very important to a villain is he has to have, he or she, or they, robots. They have to have a understandable reason to be doing what they're doing, not just be evil for the sake of evil.
I kind of want to disagree with that.
I would also argue against that.
Because I feel like there are some really good villains that are evil just for the pure sake of being evil. And I honestly would say that going off of your understanding, why they're evil, yeah, you have to be evil for the sake of being evil, but you also have to understand this character. You have to have a good, I don't, not backstory, but kind of sort of reasoning for their truly evilness. Because I don't know, I feel like there are some really cliche lines, they're, okay, sorry, words, I know what I want to say, but words are just poof, gone. You can have the cliche villain of either revenge, driven by revenge, or they think that they're doing the right thing, but they're really the villain. But if it's not written really well, then it just stays in the cliche and they're not a good villain. But if you have writing that's really good for it, or if it's an actor who's portraying it, if the actor does a really good job of portraying the villain, even though the writing might not be good, you have to have someone who can make them really good. I don't know. That's my reasoning. Because you can have a truly evil villain for the sake of being evil, as long as they're written well.
No, yeah.
I think there's another level to it as well. Not just great writing, but I think the purpose of the villain. Mm-hmm. Some villains, if they're written they're evil just to be evil, that's not interesting. But then there's also the villains that are hyper aware that they are evil yes, and then just don't care. And those I think are really interesting. I'm evil just because that's what I want to do. And it's but you could be good. He's but that's boring. And there's those kinds of villains. And I think that's really interesting. But then you have the ones that are I have no real motivation. I just do bad things because it's the opposite of what a good guy would do. And so I agree with you for those villains, Isaac, but then I'd side with Hope for the ones that are a little more complex. I think it's definitely a spectrum.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yes. So, and I think it also depends on who the hero is too, of the story. If your protagonist is kind of I don't want to do anything, and you have to force them into fighting the villain, then I feel you're also going to side with the villain, because why would you want to be the good guy if this is who you have to be with? But also if you have a hero that's super strong, you also don't necessarily want a villain that's going to be just I tipped over that chair because I can. Why'd you tip over the chair? Oh, because that old lady there is going to trip over it. Doing it for the chaos type thing. And building upon that, I think it would make better for if you have a strong hero, then you need the strong villain as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a nice clause that I think I always like to follow mentally, which is if you create a really powerful hero, the villain better be more powerful in order to actually be a threat.
Yeah.
See, and then I would diverge from that. I think some of the most powerful heroes, they don't need the most powerful villains. The thing that comes to mind with Superman is he can't be beat. He's the strongest being on the planet, generally in the universe, but his biggest rival is just a human, and that's Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor is just smarter.
Yeah.
And so there's where their strengths and weaknesses complement each other. Lex Luthor is smart as he is. He's not introspective. He's really bad at recognizing that he's a bad guy, because in a lot of incarnations of Lex Luthor, he's like, I'm trying to kill Superman because he's like a threat. Like, he will turn on us and destroy us. And in his mind, he's a really good guy. But then he's not reflective. Like, he needs to go back to like high school when you'd have to do like the circle discussions and talk with people and see other people's point of view.
I want to.
But then when you have like
argue with you really quickly before you continue. I don't think that Superman's biggest threat is a human. I think it's a rock. I think it's kryptonite.
A human with a rock?
So, good point. However, kryptonite is Lex Luthor's biggest weapon. That's how he evens the playing field. But that's like a level of intelligence too, because depending on which incarnation, I know in most, like, kryptonite is like a fragment of Krypton. Other times it's like synthetic and yada yada yada. So, finding it and using it is a whole other thing than it just existing too. So a lot of Superman villains, as much as they rely on it, that's where they even the playing field, and that's how you can make some villains interesting, because if Superman can just punch him through a wall real quick and like there's no obstacle to overcome, then it's not as interesting. But if they can, find either a mental flaw or, like with kryptonite, a physical flaw, that makes it more interesting to follow Superman, but also makes that villain more interesting because they're not just, another person he can punch through the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. It's a rock.
It's a rock.
It's a rock. Like, Superman gets taken down by a rock.
And sunlight, depending on what color it is.
If it's red sun, right? That's what
red sun takes him down, yellow sun powers him up. Blue sun, wicked, powers him up. But also, we could do a whole episode on Superman lore. But I think another thing too, talking about like comparing them to the hero, is I think there's two stereotypical ways you kind of map some really good villains out. One of them is they mirror the hero almost exactly, and then they have like one diverging point, usually like in their morality. And like the villain is saying like, hey, here's your favorite hero, and I'm what they would be if we had this one thing different. And some of my favorite heroes or some of my favorite heroes and villain complements, that's the like map they follow. Is the hero is this like shining light, something to aspire to, and then the villain is, one wrong choice away from the hero.
Yeah. It's also great when a hero becomes a villain because of usually that one wrong choice. Like in Injustice, when Superman is the bad guy. Brilliant.
One of my favorite games of all time. I love that. And the true villain of that series is not Superman, it is Wonder Woman, because she encouraged him to be a villain.
Yes! I've been saying this. What makes a good villain? If I could quote Megamind, anyone could be a villain, but in order to be a super one, it's all about presentation.
That's such a good quote. When thinking about this episode, I thought of Megamind a lot, and I almost went back and rewatched it just for some philosophical arguments on villains, because it makes like good ones. Because Megamind, like very differently, or like just a few differences, he would have been like an incredibly good superhero, but just because he was pitted against
Metro Man.
He's like, Metro Man's everything I want to be, so I need to take that from him, instead of saying like Metro Man has his own strengths, but I have my own strengths, so we could work together. Like, it's just that, the mentality.
Well, it's also everybody else like pushing him down because he's different. So like they're like, no, you are the villain. Like, you have the same powers, but you're the villain because you look different. And I think that goes into like Stan Lee's argument, like when he made X-Men too. Like, just because you're different doesn't make you a villain. It's just, because we can have superheroes that are different, we can have villains that are different, but it depends on what you choose and what society pushes onto them too.
Oh yeah, speaking of X-Men, Magneto's an interesting one to look at too, and talking about that same as the hero, but one difference is like he and Professor X have all these like, I mean, they have that history together. They lead very similar lives as like early mutants. But then Magneto's like, I'm treated differently because I'm a mutant, so I'm going to destroy the non-mutant world. Professor X is like, well, let's integrate it so we can understand them and they can understand us. Like that, just slight difference.
In Magneto's mind, he's not a villain. He's not a bad guy. He is a hero for mutant kind.
And sometimes he really is a hero, like in a more objective sense too.
Yeah.
So...
Well, like if you look at X-Men First Class too, like he was driven to destroy another mutant with Kevin Bacon's character that I can't remember his name, but because Kevin Bacon's character killed Magneto's mom, all of a sudden Magneto's just like, you gotta die, bro, and I don't care how long it takes. So.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I know I mentioned two, and I didn't mention the other one, but we have that like slightly, the same, but like one difference. But then there's also other villains. I'll give examples of this. Is like they are the exact opposite of what the hero stands for. And while I feel like that one gets overplayed a lot, I feel like when it's done really well, it's really, really powerful. So like examples would be like any Sith Lord in Star Wars. Well, not any. I'll take that back. Like thinking the difference between like Luke Skywalker and Emperor Palpatine, very, very different. But then if you, those are like the parallels, like light side versus dark, these opposites and different ideals. But then you look at like Luke versus Vader, and Luke is how Vader would have turned out if he just didn't make. There's a couple of bad decisions that Anakin made to become Vader, but if he just hadn't made that final turn, like Luke is like tempted in the same or similar way, but in the end, Luke is strong enough to choose the light side. Vader chose the dark side.
To be fair to like Star Wars villains, though, wasn't there like a fan theory that came out that like if you were above a certain height, you went to the dark side, and if you were below, you were the light side, and like if you hit that height, you kind of like teetered.
Oh, you were a gray Jedi or something in between?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't heard that, but that's funny.
I don't think I had heard that either, but as someone that watches Star Wars, I can kind of understand that.
If you look it up, it makes like they go through like all of the characters and their height and like how like, oh yeah, they're on the dark side, they're on the light side.
So Yoda is the most good Jedi, most good person because he's the smallest.
Actually, as of Mandalorian, I'm going to debunk that theory because I think Grogu's a Sith Lord.
Oh, I understand that.
I don't think he is yet, but I want to see Darth Grogu as like I've seen concept art, and I think it's really funny.
He force choked
Cara Dune
when she did something bad, not even bad once. She just like
no, she was arm wrestling Mando and winning, so he's like,
this is a 50-year-old alien right here.
Like a baby Yoda that's like this big, just being evil is just throwing temper tantrums. Like, let's be honest.
Oh, but because of that Cara Dune scene, I'm like, I feel like he loves chaos. And like, if Luke doesn't like train that out of him, I feel like he could be like an actual problem.
Yeah.
Maybe we get a Dark Yoda. You never know.
I think it'd be fun. And I know there's like Star Wars one-off comics where you see like I don't know if it's Yoda or like Yoda species as like a dark side force user, which would be interesting. But another aspect, kind of like similar under the umbrella of what makes a good villain. I feel like we went to like some of like the more complicated stuff, but I think like the basis to be a villain, someone has to kind of have low morality, and work against the protagonist. Like those two things combined is really the basics of it. But then like as we like get into these upper level things that we kind of talked about, like whether they foil them, their relationship with the protagonist and stuff like that, there's different types of villains too, and I did my best to like kind of categorize and give examples. So I'll start with a category that I think is important to distinguish, but I think there's the comedic, or I call them the ones that are bad at being bad. And the way I've distinguished my villain tier list is there's three variables. There's their awareness, their intentions, and whether or not they want to be a villain. And the comedic ones are not aware of anything. They're low awareness, but they have bad intentions, but they also want to be a villain. So like I'm thinking like Gru at the beginning of Despicable Me, like I am bad to the bone, but also I adopted 3 children and now I have a family. Whoops. Like that kind of stuff.
To be fair, he was going, I'm adopting these children so I can get into this other villain's lair to steal the shrink ray so I can steal the moon. Like, it was purely like, he adopted them for like evil purposes.
He would have been, if he was good at being bad, he would have either sent them back to the orphanage or used them as like he would have just grouped him in with the minions and like, all right, now you make all my evil inventions. But
Fair.
he's bad at being bad, so he like became their dad. Oh, that rhymes.
Yeah. Very reminiscent of Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb, who is awful at being bad to the point where he constantly ends up doing good things almost. But he only has the vendetta too against Perry pretty much. But like,
and it's every episode. It's like, I'm gonna talk about my past and this thing that messed me up. But then
so
I don't have this continuous vendetta. Once I like, have you heard the theory that like Perry and like the whole organization are just like therapy animals that help these like supervillains like work through their trauma by letting them tell their stories but stopping them before they like do harm?
I love that.
Oh, it's adorable, but I'm like, okay, that makes so much sense. But also, Doofenshmirtz is a king, never making any assumptions that when he sees a platypus that it's Perry the platypus. Be like Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
You said the comedic villain, and I immediately thought Deadpool. I know he's supposed to be like hero.
I also like debated talking about Deadpool here just because he is an anti-hero, but also like if he also was like the weirdest tier of villain where he's like, I want to be so bad, but also I end up being a good guy and I don't want that, but it happens.
I feel like he definitely fits with Doofenshmirtz and Gru in that aspect of like, I'm gonna do evil, but it ends up being good, and dang it, why did it become good?
Mm-hmm.
So.
I definitely see these villains like popping up more in like stuff meant for kids or like parody content. Like these usually aren't your like super serious, like these villains will rarely show up in like Oscar nominated dramas. And stuff like that, probably because they're comedic. But like I could not think of an example where it was like a serious tone and you had a villain that was bad at being bad. Like even not necessarily comedic, but they weren't good at it. So if anyone can think of those, leave a comment, or if we think of one later in the episode, chime in. But then going back to my 3 variables, if you guys have other variables you want to add in, please interrupt me because there's so much complexity and depth to this.
I mean, I feel like a big like part is also creep factor, because you have some of the villains that like you're like, no, you don't look creepy, like that stereotypical villain evil person look. Like you can't be evil. Like
Ted Bundy. That's how Ted Bundy got away with everything he did. He's like, I'm attractive. I don't look like a serial killer.
Like yeah.
And actually, I mentioned that later in my.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, other than the fact that she's pink and just giving off the, but like Dolores Umbridge, like you just kind of look at her and you think, oh, maybe she's like that little auntie that's just like, no.
Nah, she's racist aunt.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think, but like she doesn't give off the creep factor until she starts talking and doing stuff. So like that kind of villain also like sneaks up on you. And I think
the surprise villain. The aesthetic does not match the intentions.
Exactly.
Good one.
And so I think creep factor, because like if you've got a villain who looks like the stereotypical mad scientist or whatever, like you're just like, okay, he's the villain, whatever. But like if you've got like the surprise villain, I feel like that kind of adds to evil.
Hans from Frozen.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
Sidetrack. There was someone who made a social media post that their dad was upset because Hans had red hair and Elsa, was with the white hair, so she had ice powers, and he was expecting Hans to have fire powers and was really upset that Hans didn't have fire powers. And I feel like that would have added like.
Doesn't Anna also have red hair?
Yeah, but like it's.
Yeah.
But like being the villain.
I should have had summer powers, okay?
Yeah.
Just saying.
She didn't. Oh, wait. Never mind. Elsa was born with her powers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Frozen 2 explains why Elsa kind of sort of has her powers, but it doesn't explain why Anna doesn't have her powers. And it's just like, but it kind of sort of does, because apparently there's 5 elements instead of just,
Yeah.
Whatever. Frozen 2 is a fun movie. But also Hans, if I was to like be a Disney villain, he's on my list. I think I could play a pretty good Hans. And then another category of villain that I really like, I'm calling it the misguided hero.
Sorry, I just thought of something for the surprise villain. It just like came to my mind as we were talking about like Disney, and I went from Weaselton to Wesselton to Zootopia, and the Lamb, the deputy mayor. You know, she's that surprise villain of, oh look, I'm cute, I'm a sheep, my hair is fluffy, and to psych, I want to get rid of all of the predators. Sorry,
Literally wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah. Racist.
Yes.
I going through the villain stuff, I just realized like that's a big trope. Like it's like if it's sci-fi, they're space racist against aliens. If it's Harry Potter, they're wizard racist. Like whatever makes people different, it's just like we take our current societal race problems and just mirror that onto the fictional world. Which, and as much as I like knew it happened a lot for this episode, it happens like every time. Like, which sucks because it makes some of your favorite stuff seem unoriginal, but at the same time, if you just like ignore that, it's still fun. But one of my favorite categories of villain is the misguided hero, and that's the villain that thinks they're the good guy and thinks the good guy is the bad guy. So for my variables, they've got low awareness because they don't know that they're the villain. They have bad intentions, but they're not aware that they have bad intentions. But they don't want to be the villain. They're like, I'm the good guy. I know I already mentioned Lex Luthor, but I also throw Voldemort in this category because I feel like he's like, as much as he's after power and everything, he's also like, I genuinely think I'm doing good. And as much as these people don't, I know that one I feel like is controversial, but I think Voldemort thinks he's the good guy.
I was more going, I was trying to decide if I wanted to put Grindelwald in there, or if he was the pure evil, because like he has similar attributes to what Voldemort's philosophy is, but I feel like he also just like is evil too, like not like he doesn't necessarily want the good for everybody else, but like good for him more. And like, oh, if you are my follower or like on my side, then I'll spread the good to you, instead of like Voldemort, where it's like, yeah, if you're a pure blood, then we're fine. Or, I guess we'll accept half-bloods, but, we won't accept Muggle-borns or Muggles at all. So, but yeah, so I was debating if I wanted to put Grindelwald in there or not, but I feel like he's kind of in there, but also like steps into like just the egotistical narcissist villain. So
agreed. And to add on to the misguided hero trope is you could put in almost any civilization that pretty much follows the like imperialistic type of like government style, and the fact that like the Empire in Star Wars thinks they're the good guys. They are keeping order, and if you, to them, they're rebels, they're terrorists, they're trying to stop the order. Same thing with I don't know, there's a lot of stuff like that, I guess.
Templars in Assassin's Creed.
Exactly. Yes. They keep order. They think they're doing right. You could say a lot of during colonialism in real life, there was a lot of civilizations that thought they were doing right by taking over these non-civilized, in quotes, peoples, when really they're kind of the bad guy.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
I think okay. Again, this is kind of sorta, and I can't fully remember his name, but he's played by Idris Elba in the Star Trek movie, the third one. And I feel like he's like the misguided because he and his crew had gotten forgotten about by
I I watched the first two of the new Star Trek, and of course the one I didn't watch. So I can't add in on this.
It's okay, but like he's like the misguided because he feels like he's helping by getting rid of what on my command fleet, essentially in like the outposts that we've created. But he honestly is creating more chaos because he's essentially like turning people against each other and destroying people. But he's still like that misguided villain, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also a surprise villain because you don't realize who he is. You think he's just this alien race, but then it turns out he was actually a Starfleet commander and he had to adapt to look like an alien so he could survive. And so yeah, he fits into multiple categories.
Yeah. Yes. I've only seen the movie once and a long time ago, but you're giving me all these flashbacks. Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, specifically from the animated version. As much as the live action is nice, that one is kind of a warmonger. The one in the animated version is literally like, he's a very popular guy in town.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone makes fun of this one girl. He is like, I look past that. I want to marry the girl everyone's making fun of. And then she gets kidnapped by a monster. And he's like, I have to go kill the monster and bring her back. He thinks he's a good guy, but he is very much a misogynist.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we're touching on something too. Like as I'm like listening to us talk, I feel like two P words popped into my head, and I thought in my head they were the same. But perspective and philosophy are like a big part because I know I mentioned earlier like that foil, like just one thing is different, and one of those I think a lot of that time the difference is perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's also that major difference in like at my fundamental philosophical level, I want to challenge this social norm, and people are going to think I'm evil, and a lot of the times I am, but sometimes I'm right.
Yeah.
I think that's another aspect of it. On the flip side of the misguided hero, flipping the awareness and intentions category, they have high awareness with good intentions and don't want to be a villain, but they're still a villain. And that's, I haven't come up with a good name. I just call them good intentions, but no, their actions aren't right because I can't think of something. Or a fallen angel.
Ooh.
I guess that one works.
Lucifer, because
not a villain in most of the comic book stuff, but biblically, I could give you that.
But also, he's aware of his powers and is trying to do good. And he always, in the show, is always saying, I don't make people do bad things. I punish the damned. But we make him out to be evil. So I feel like, he is created to be the villain, but he's trying to be good and do good things.
I interpreted it slightly differently because I would call Lucifer a hero. Like, I know he's the protagonist of the show, and then you can have the perspective of with the new Cruella de Vil with Emma Stone coming out. My guess is this movie will take the perspective we know she's the villain, but we're taking her perspective and following her along with that. And I think with Lucifer, it's you think he'd be the villain, but once you take his perspective, you no longer see that. But the one that pops into my head for this one is Mr. Freeze from Batman, who is he's literally, don't count Batman and Robin movie. That's not the same Mr. Freeze. He just wants to make everything cold there. But in most incarnations of Mr. Freeze, the reason he commits crime and does everything is so he can continue his scientific research and save his wife. But to do that, he kills a lot of other people. So there's he's I know I'm wrong, I know I'm bad, but my wife matters so much to me, I don't care.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to pull in the angels from Supernatural. Other than Cass and a couple others, because basically the angels, and this will come up in my later in my list, but the angels are dicks. And then you go and you see some of the demons, and the demons are trying to help the Winchesters, and the angels are just no, destroy the Winchesters. And yeah, so I mean there are bad demons, just like there's good angels, but I feel like it got flipped in Supernatural, that they flipped everything. And also, like, spoiler, but they make God a dick too. Like, he starts off really nice, but like he turns out to be just a dick, like his angels. So but I feel like they're that high, like they know what they're doing and they claim to be doing good, but they're really the villains.
Now I don't know if he would be in the character I'm about to talk about would be a misguided hero or in this other concept of doing bad things, but because they know it's what they have to do. But Ozymandias from Watchmen.
Ozymandias. Oh,
Ozymandias.
I love that. Yes.
And either whether you read it or you watched it, he is a hero who's the smartest man in the world. But he willingly kills like 1/3 of the population billions of people in order to pretty much foster world peace. And I don't really know how much it dwells on, because he questions if he did what was right. He asks Dr. Manhattan, and Dr. Manhattan's like, I don't know.
You messed with my powers, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, he's like, it's too late anyways, you already did it. But he does it, and in order to create world peace, and he does succeed, but he knows he kind of did bad. He killed people along the way. He did all this stuff for this end goal. I don't know if if he thinks he's a hero or if he knows that it's bad, but it's to create a bigger, better world. And he was the one that decided to pull the trigger.
If you're going to make that argument, are you going to say Thanos is the same?
Endgame Thanos, but only MCU Thanos. Because if you look at comics Thanos,
he did it to impress death. He wanted to court death, and they didn't do that in MCU. And
the thing that I love about the MCU is they make like the snap this big thing, but in the comics it was just like, well, I could do it with a snap of the finger, and then he just does it. Yeah. Then like he literally could have been anything. He could have clapped. He could have just thought about it. And I think in the MCU, like the snap, it just symbolizes like the mental will to do whatever you're asking the stones to do, and that's why it took Hulk so long in Endgame to snap, because he was trying to do stuff that the stones wouldn't let him do, such as bring Nat back. That's my theory. Yeah. But then with Thanos, it's like, this is really easy. I'm going to take away half the stuff, half the living stuff,
which includes, the trees and the animals. It's not.
That's what I think a lot of people forget about too. Is that includes every living thing.
So he literally just went, okay, you're at 10. But now you're at small scale 10. Like, no. Made more sense when he just killed people, like Gamora's, her planet, when, he actually just rounded up people and went, split you in half. Okay, now kill this half. Like, then they still had all the resources. And,
as much as we say this is like, that makes his plan more sense. We don't condone either side.
No.
You also could just double the resources with the snap.
That was disgusting.
The flawed logic.
Make everyone half their height. Just shrink everyone, and then suddenly there's tons of stuff.
Like the movie with Matt Damon. What was it? Life Size or something?
Mini. I don't know, something.
Yeah, where they basically
Downsize.
Hey, downsize. That's what it was. If you want to shrink yourself so that you use less resources, go do this. I actually haven't watched that movie, but like.
But no, the Thanos from Infinity War, who had this great plan and like did it, and he knew that what the cost was. Yeah, he would be probably this villain that knew what he was doing was bad, but he did it for the
greater
for
good.
A better world, for greater good. But then Thanos in Endgame, the Warlord, that guy was just bad.
I have to reduce this world to atoms and build it up. Those who knew what once was, well, like all that stuff, the whole like
the grateful world.
And I'm like, that happened. And I'm like, oh crap, he's no longer this is not the Thanos we met before.
This is the Thanos we had previews of when they hadn't cast
Josh
Brolin, and they couldn't decide what color purple to make Thanos.
Speaking of Josh Brolin, I think we can throw Cable in this category too. Ooh. Specifically from Deadpool 2. I know he's a bit different in the comics, but I need to go back in time so I can kind of like kill this kid. But just so the future doesn't get destroyed by his powers. But also then Deadpool's like, we could, just talk to him.
So then, have you guys seen Heroes, the show Heroes?
Is that on FX?
I don't know. It's on Amazon Prime. It's an older show, and then they brought it back as Heroes Reborn with Zachary Levi as a villain. Which
Zachary Levi is a villain?
yes, it was weird. After him being Chuck and adorable to badass villain
and Shazam.
Yeah, I think he was villain pre Shazam. So, but I feel like Siler and then Peter Petrelli might be in this because, like, I mean, Siler has his own view on how the world is, and Peter's like, no, I need to protect, and Siler's like, hey, I need to kill the cheerleader, and Peter's like, no, protect the cheerleader because she's what saves us. And they go through this whole thing. It changes over time throughout the seasons too, but I feel like we could bring in both of those because Peter also goes bad at one point. So
save the cheerleader, save the world. Doesn't what is it Silas?
Siler.
Isn't his like power that if he kills someone with powers, he can take their power?
I don't fully remember.
I don't know. Any nerd that's watching, you can yell at me if I'm wrong.
Peter Petrelli does that. I think Siler maybe does it later, but like because Claire has like she's invincible, she can't die essentially, and Peter dies at one point, and like Claire touches him, and Peter absorbs her power essentially, so he doesn't die. Maybe in like later seasons, I don't fully remember if Siler goes back. But hey, if people are watching Heroes, I know my dad's going to comment on this because he probably remembers it more than I do. But like, yeah, if you remember, correct us.
That is the most villain power I've ever heard. Hey, if you kill someone, you can get their powers.
Yeah.
Like incentive to kill? Sweet. And then we've already touched on this category. It was the last one I came up with. But like the pure evil, the ones that are just amoral, don't do anything. I put them as high awareness with bad intentions and want to be a villain. These are your Emperor Palpatines. As much as he has like this other thing, like he uses the dark side to use the dark side because he likes the power. The Joker, any serial killer villain, generally they're like wicked smart and they're like, I know killing's wrong, but I don't care, and stuff like that. That's personally my favorite category of villain because I find that really interesting because I can't relate to that at all.
Would like Penguin from the show Gotham fit into this category?
I would put Penguin as that's a good one. I wouldn't do Penguin just because he has the whole like backstory of like he wants to rise through the ranks and just like, and he does good things sometimes, and I think he's just after power, but not like he has a limit. And I feel like the villains that really fit this category, that like nothing phases them. They're truly amoral, and they have no issue with they have no more lines to cross. If that makes sense.
So yeah, it does. And I just thought of the show Titans, which was on DC Universe and like Netflix and everywhere else except for the United States because we needed to pay for DC's streaming service.
I had the streaming service and I watched like 2 episodes and then my streaming service subscription ended and I didn't want to pay for it anymore. And now it's on HBO Max.
But having like Batman kill Joker in Titans and then Batman just goes pure evil and needs Dick Grayson to come bring him back. Like I feel like that kind of Batman would be that pure evil because he's defeated his greatest villain.
Actually, that exists in comics, and that is called the Batman Who Laughs, who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest comic book characters to be created in the last 5 years. That whole like the DC metal arc is like insanely good, so what happens in that is like basically in like the negative multiverse where like everything goes wrong and like the villains technically win. the storylines match. What is it called? Like, so each member of the Justice League, Batman gets their powers and turns evil. So it's Batman mixed with a different member of the Justice League and evil. But for the Batman on, I guess it's this is going to sound wrong, but the Batman on Batman universe, Batman kills the Joker, but Joker toxin from Joker's like body leaks out after Batman kills him, infects Batman, and now it's the Joker with the intelligence, skills, and resources of Batman.
Alrighty.
Terrifying.
It is. Oh, it's the most ridiculous villain ever. Also, if this one's more new, and I recommended the comic, I think it was 2 episodes ago. But the same negative multiverse thing happened with Batman and Darkseid. Yeah. So the intelligence, resources, and skills of Batman with the intelligence, resources, and skills of Darkseid. Wow. What a villain. So to finish off the episode, before we get to our just general recommendations, we all have prepared a top 5 list of our favorite villains. So how I think we should start this as like the personal like restrictions we had for ourselves. And then we can get into like number 5, we'll each say it, number 4, each say it, and so on. So I'll start my categories and my number 5. I guess I'll start with that. So my restrictions for this is I'm not counting any villain that has a redemption arc. So if they can end up becoming a good guy, they're out. So Loki's out from the MCU. Vader is technically out. Kylo Ren is technically out. Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender is out. Stuff like that. I'm also counting, for the most part, there's one person on my list that kind of falls out of this, but all of their media presence is what I'm judging. Not like a specific version or anything in general, but like who that villain is as in all of media, not just by one portrayal or one like actor that played them or one voice actor that played them or one type of that character from a comic. And then the thing that really, like I said before, my favorite category is like that pure evil, amoral stuff. But that on top of like villains that are just like really smart about being a villain, whether that means like they're actually like creatively intelligent or they're just like so good at being bad that it's like a special skill. Like in a resume, they could just put evil and they'd be really good. And like you would get hired if you were just looking for someone that was evil. So that's my take. My number 5 on my list is Zahir from The Legend of Korra Season 3. If you haven't watched it, Zahir, Legend of Korra, each season, the villain corresponds to some political ideology, and Zahir is an anarchist. Like he is like no government, no control, no anything. And that's one of the reasons I really liked him, because his philosophy works really well in theory. But then he just takes everything way too far, and everything, descends into chaos. And like nothing he says on like the philosophical level, I like inherently disagree with. But then he goes around killing people, and that's a problem. Also, just as a nostalgic bonus, Zahir's the reason if I was in the Avatar universe, I'd want to be an Airbender, because seeing Aang airbend in like Last Airbender is like, okay, that's really cool. Like it's really but Aang's like a pacifist, and he's not going to do all like the crazy stuff. Zahir is not a pacifist, and has no problem with straight up murder. And seeing someone airbend to, like in such a violent way, I was like, nah, I'd be an Airbender. Not because I'm like condoning violence, but because I just like seeing Zahir airbend. I'm like, that's style of airbending I would try to learn, not the way that Aang intends to do it. So, Isaac, do you want to go next?
I will. Yeah, I also kind of I cut away anti-heroes. I thought long and hard about how much I really like certain villains, and I was like, but I can't, because those people either turn good or have a streak of goodness or aren't really evil in the first place. And so I tried to go with just villains. And then I also tried to I thought long and hard. I tried not to do too many stereotypical villains, I suppose. But my number 5 villain is the Beast from Over the Garden Wall. I don't know if either of you have seen that. In which case, I don't want to spoil everything because it's a great show. He is, for almost the entire, there's 10 episodes. For almost all of those episodes, you just see this tall silhouette with like antlers. And he has this like deep, smooth voice. He's very charismatic, and he's got like just glowing eyes. And it's a super eeriness of like being in the woods. And the main characters are in this place they don't know, and they keep hearing about the Beast. And there's just like this well vocalized man who is walking around the woods doing stuff. And also just he has a great reveal. Like, I don't know, it's just like a character that I wouldn't have thought of. And he is an evil person. He cares not about the lives of others. They are but fuel for his fire. He's pretty sick.
Nice. Hope, I'm excited to hear your pick.
Okay. So I ranked mine by whether they were like the wrong path evil, where like something made it so that they had like kind of forced them to be evil, or like they picked the wrong choices and became evil, to truly evil. And so my like number 5, so it was a tie because technically like it's both the King Arthur story, but it's 2 different shows. And I will say that all of my villains are like specific to like a show or movie. So I have Morgana from Merlin, because she starts off and she's super good and like wants to do good, but then because of freaking Uther Pendragon, who is kind of an ass in any King Arthur story you like watch or read, he did not make my list, I will say, because I didn't put in characters that I just like ultimately hated. Because like if I just pure hatred towards a character, I didn't put him in. Whereas like if I liked the villain, like I was like, okay, I like this villain, I'm good with this villain, then that's what helped them make my list. And Morgana was one of them because it was definitely like when she started getting her powers and everything. If Uther didn't have the no magic law over Camelot and England, then she definitely could have flourished as like a good character. And if like her hatred towards the Pendragon bloodline didn't just like manifest itself within her heart and like turn her into a villain, I think she could have worked with Arthur to bring back magic into Camelot. But also the weeping monk in the show Cursed, like it kind of spoils the ending, but like you see he wants to do good, and like at one point he talks with the Green Knight, and how like he doesn't kill the women or children, or like he doesn't harm the children of the Fae, but he definitely like was led down the wrong path by the Red Paladins, who are essentially monks, Christian beliefs and everything. So, you know, magic is bad again. But he does have a redemption arc, kind of, sort of, at the end. But also I want to see what happens in season 2, if he remains that, like, villainous character, or if he does get the full redemption arc. Because he, like, everyone in the Fae community was like, watch out for the weeping monk, like, he's awful. And even within the like the monk world, he was like revered as like this amazing soldier on their side in the path to ridding the world of the devil and demons. And so yeah, Morgana and the weeping monk are my number 5 villains.
Nice. All right. My number 4. Dang it, Isaac, you already mentioned it in the podcast. I was hoping we weren't going to talk about him just so I could mention him. But Ozymandias from Watchmen is my number 4. I watched the movie before I read the comic. So like the reveal at the end that Ozzy was the villain, I was like, oh, crap. But then like watching his plan and how like meticulous and methodic he had to be to like get to the end. But then also that philosophical thing, like, I know what I'm doing is wrong, but if I don't do this, I feel like there's a threat of like everyone will die. So I'll kill, you know, a third, a lot of people, so that the rest can live, which is like the ultimate trolley problem. Either like nuclear winter, or I can cause like very specific explosions that mimic Dr. Manhattan's powers that are going to kill billions of people, but then the US and the Soviet Union can make a truce against Dr. Manhattan, who is the only other major threat to the planet. If you haven't seen Watchmen, most of that makes no sense, but also like it was a genius plan, and I really respected that. And I, as much as I would love to see more of the Watchmen series, I feel like that story in and of itself is like really, really good. And since DC has gotten like the Watchmen property, it's not quite the same. But the original concept for Watchmen and Ozymandias as the ultimate sacrificial lamb, I guess is the way I'd put it, was really, really good. And I thought it was really, really impactful, because in the end, he wasn't wrong. I would not have done what he did. But he also won. Like you can't, like, it doesn't matter what happens after it. He won. That's it. And I just props to Ozzy for beating Dr. Manhattan, who in all of media properties is probably one of the most powerful characters there is.
I agree. Just tangent. Just when he explains his plan, and all the other heroes are like, "There's no way you're gonna get, like, we won't let you do this." And he goes, "You think I'm dumb?" He's like, "I activated this like a half hour ago. Like, it already happened while you're here." And they're like,
I know that. He's like, "You think I'm dumb enough to tell you my plan and not already have done it?"
Oh, it's so smart. Okay. So my number 4. From the Borderlands games, Handsome Jack.
Ooh, good pick. I forgot about it.
I love Handsome Jack. He is, and there was a time, like in the pre-sequel, when, he's technically thinks he's doing the right thing, but then it hits a point where he kind of just goes crazy and selfish and does whatever. He's hilarious. I think he's a great character, but also he's like the biggest dick. Like, he's such a douche. And like, you're playing through and he's just like radio and like calling you all the time whenever you do something. And it's like hilarious. And you're like, gosh, I love this character. But then he like does some awful things. And you're like, I love him and I can't wait to kill him. And it's going to be so great. And you're just kind of like, it makes you look forward to the end of the game where you're like, I can finally knock this guy down a peg.
That's something we didn't talk about, is the villains that like you like, but also it's so satisfying to beat them.
Yes.
All right, so my number 4 is Javert from Les Mis.
Ooh.
I didn't even think about like.
You were thinking about musicals, were you, Brendan?
No, I get so caught up in comic book movie and stuff, and I'm like, I need to be more diverse than just comic book villains, and I did my best, but then I'm like, crap, there's a lot of really good musical villains too, aren't there?
Yes. So Javert made my list from Les Mis, and that for this one, I do specifically mean Les Mis as a whole. I don't mean just like Russell Crowe or any of the Javerts from any of the productions of Les Mis, whether it was when they had the turntable stage or after they got rid of the turntable stage. But Javert is just like, he's trying to be good and like trying to like make sure that France is like people are respecting the law, that that all of that good stuff. But like, he is definitely still like that villain, because you're like, listen, he's trying to redeem himself. Let Jean Valjean redeem himself and be the mayor of this little town and like take care of this little orphan girl who's in a terrible situation. But Javert is just like, no, you're still a criminal and you missed your parole days, and so you have to come back to jail for the rest of your life. And then he's like on the kingdom side of France, of trying to squash the revolution of the college boys, and so he's trying to be like that double agent. And then the fact, like, he gets his mini redemption arc, but then spoiler, he commits suicide because he's like, I was a terrible villain, and like I see what I did wrong now, and I don't deserve to live. But so the fact that like he becomes self-aware of the terrible things that he did and like how it was misguided and how he was pushed down the wrong path essentially while being told that he was on the right path, like that makes him my number 4 because he is getting closer to the truly evil, but he's also, he realizes his mistakes in the end. So.
That's interesting too. Something you said in there with the him working for the revolution, or not working against the revolution, is I feel like something that happens a lot is like you can already tell the villain's going to lose because they're playing for the losing side, especially in anything that has to do with history. But I feel like there's also the villains that they're playing for the winning side. If you've ever, I can think of one, and that's the villains from Assassin's Creed Unity. The Templars are on the side of Robespierre and the revolutionaries, and that made me think of that. And I was like, a villain that is going to win. If that changes the perspective at all. So moving on, my number 3, if you watched our episode last week, was my number 1 CW villain. It is my number 3 villain of all time, Prometheus. This is my exception. This is specifically from Arrow because the Adrian Chase Prometheus from Arrow season 5 is very different from the Prometheus from the comics. While Prometheus from the comics is a really good Justice League villain, didn't quite make my top 5. But Adrian Chase's Prometheus from Arrow season 5. He's a pure evil villain that only does what he does because the hero exists, and is literally the antithesis of Oliver Queen's Arrow. If you don't know his backstory, his father was killed in Oliver's first year as the Arrow because his dad was a corrupt businessman, and since then, Adrian Chase was working on finding the perfect revenge to get back at the Arrow, and that was his whole thing. And he gets his revenge and then keeps going. Eventually he's defeated, but he won. And I think it was like season 5, episode 17, he gets Oliver to admit that Oliver wasn't this like shining light all along, that he enjoys like killing and other very like morally ambiguous acts. And like I mentioned it last week, if you watched last week's episode, if not, go watch it. But the whole scene where he makes Oliver admit that he likes murder, and he goes, "Cool, I won. That's all I wanted you to say. We're good." And then he goes to kidnap Oliver's son and try to murder his whole family, and he's like, "Yeah, I won, but also I want to keep winning." I was like, "That's dark." And Oliver as a hero is really like tactical and generally pretty calculated. And out calculating Oliver is a pretty substantial feat. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
I've never seen any CW superhero show. I don't know why. I just haven't. I love superheroes.
They're fun. They're entertaining.
I have a DC like superhero encyclopedia, and Prometheus is in there, but solely pretty much like his whole entry is just pretty much like he got murdered by Green Arrow. Like Green Arrow killed him, and it's like that's why he was in this small book of encyclopedia, was because he was one of the villains that successfully pretty much tempted their hero into killing them. Anyways, so that's all I had in my head from that. My number 3 is the Dark Lord Morgoth from the Silmarillion, the Lord of the Rings world, also known as Melkor, but then when he went evil, it became Morgoth. Also known as the first Dark Lord. If it puts anything into perspective, Sauron was this guy's lieutenant. So, Sauron is just pretty much like the Grand Moff Tarkin of Star Wars, whereas Morgoth would be the Emperor.
Wouldn't Sauron be Vader?
Yes.
I think that's Grand Moff Tarkin would be
the Witch King.
There you go.
Probably. Or the mouth of Sauron. He's there, then he dies. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Morgoth, he is the OG evil. Because of him, there pretty much is evil in the whole world of Arda, of Middle Earth, of everything. There's a whole nother continent called Beleriand. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Like it's like Middle Earth, and then it's like Beleriand. and it gets destroyed and sunk in the sea because of this giant war between Morgoth and then the Valar, the good gods. And pretty much like in Lord of the Rings, they're the reason Balrogs exist. They're basically fallen angels. They are these corrupted spirits, and you only hear his name in the Lord of the Rings movie, I think, once when they say a Balrog of Morgoth, and it's like the only time you hear it. But he's just big, evil, dark dude. Did a lot of bad things. He got defeated, but like at the same time he didn't, because he's kind of immortal. So,
and he has a legacy.
Yes,
and a pretty strong one.
I'm gonna do that whole start a fight without using politics and in 5 words or less. I hate Lord of the Rings. I can't stand it. I'm sorry.
That's 6 words.
6.
You lost.
Oh well. That series I can't with. In high school, we took a band trip to Atlanta, and what did we watch the entire way down? The Lord of the Rings series. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Ooh.
Isaac.
Is that Elvish?
Okay, well, this is Elvish. This is Smaug.
Okay, from a distance, I swear I thought it was Elvish. Okay, that's really cool.
That's all right. That's all right. To each their own, Hope.
But okay,
However,
here's the other thing.
We will not protect you from Hope does not like Lord of the Rings slander in the comments. I'm sorry.
Listen, I don't care.
You
People
might have
can
to
tell
deal
me
with that.
otherwise. I don't care. I will hold true to the fact that I don't like Lord of the Rings. Because let me be clear, I was on one of those like nice tour buses that you could fall asleep in. I would fall asleep for a nap. I'd wake up. They're traveling. I fall asleep. I wake up. They're traveling. Okay.
The whole story is a journey. That's the point.
They could have condensed it down into one movie.
No, they couldn't.
No, they couldn't. It was 3 books. It was actually 6 books, technically. Each book was split in 2.
Tolkien could have condensed stuff, but Tolkien was also the person that people hated going on walks with because he would stop and stare at a tree for 20 minutes. Okay? Mm-hmm. You wonder why his books are so dense and like detailed. Like, that is why. Okay? Anyways, my number 3 is Prince Viridian from The Letter for the King, and I do mean the show because in the book he's like mentioned but not really there. He's kind of like that character that like everyone's trying to make sure it doesn't get into power. But Prince Viridian, okay, honestly, he's like that villain that like I fell in love with and I was like, I need to protect you. But also because he's so misguided, like he's trying to be good and he's like, I need to protect the world from the darkness and from the prophecy that's coming, that's going to be happening. And I would love to have a discussion with people to know if they actually think Viridian was the true villain of the series, or if it was the queen that I can't remember her name. Because there's a scene where you see like her eyes go dark, like completely black, and Viridian like snaps his head to look in a mirror that just happens to like be looking where she is, and then he becomes the darkness. So I'm like, is he actually the true villain though? But like, also, I want to protect the child. But he's also in that like going more. He's like that right in between of being wrong path evil and truly evil, because he goes about trying to prevent the darkness by slaughtering people, and like specifically the shaman. And like when he learns that a shaman's child happens to be alive and is likely the thing that's going to destroy it. He believes that the shaman's child is the darkness. But the child who has the magical powers is actually the thing that defeats the darkness. But so, yeah, he basically goes through and kills a bunch of people. And at one point...
yes, flawless logic.
Yeah. Because he also gains the powers from the shaman that he kills.
Like I said, perfect villain power. I get your powers.
Yes. But it is like a ritual thing in order to get the powers. Like they have to be like burned while being killed. Yeah, it's great. They don't really show any of the deaths, thankfully, other than Viridian snapping the neck of a little bird and like letting it drop to the ground. But then he like uses his powers and brings it back to life and the bird flies away. And I'm like, okay, a zombie bird, it's fine. But yeah, Viridian is my child. I will protect him with my life, even though he's a villain. And Letter for the King on Netflix. Yes. That's my number 3.
All right, moving on to my number 2. I hope you mentioned that you kind of like left villains off your list that you just hate. Mm-hmm. My number 2 is a villain that I love to hate. No redeeming qualities, absolutely nothing about her that I like. And that would be Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series. There is nothing redeeming about her. And when I was coming up with this list, originally she was in my honorable mentions. And then I thought of one thing that moved her all the way up to number 2. And that's the scene in Deathly Hallows where she is like interrogating Muggleborns about like, you know, how they stole their magic. She's like basically mentally torturing them and then sending them off to Azkaban. And she has a Patronus that whole time. And to make a Patronus, you have to be like feeling joy and feeling good things. And she enjoys all of this like hateful stuff that she's doing. And something that I like about the Harry Potter lore, just like a little detail, is most Death Eaters can't produce a Patronus because they don't have a memory that evokes that much joy. But something I like about Umbridge is she has no allegiance to like Voldemort, really. She just like has this like really weird moral skewness to her that just makes her awful. Like all of her, she has no allegiance, and at the same time, her allegiance just goes in all the wrong places. And like, I think that's what like just makes her the best like villain to just hate. And as I think that's an important aspect of a villain is like if you hate them so much that like it feels like they're a real person that did you wrong, then they were exceptionally written. And I think Umbridge is one of the best examples of that because there is no redemption for her at all. And like in those details, it just shows that like to her core, she just enjoys being a bitch. It's just the worst.
I also want to add that you can make a Patronus with just like a happy memory as long as it's like a strong happy memory. But to make a full corporeal Patronus that you can see what it is, like hers is a cat and you know it's a cat. And like in the movie, you can see it sitting on her desk and it's like giving itself a bath and it's a full cat. It has to be a ridiculously strong memory and like happy memory in order to produce a corporeal Patronus like that. And it's like, how do you have
How do you
such
feel
a
that
strong...
happy when you're sending people to prison?
Exactly. And I'm like, no. But yeah, I definitely say anytime I reread the 5th book or watch the movie, I'm like, why didn't the centaurs kill her? I wish she was dead. So that is why she did not make my top 5. She got an honorable mention. She did not make top 5 because I wanted her dead so much. So yeah.
Nice.
Isaac.
All right. My number 2 is a character that's in a lot of things, but I wanted to be specific about it, which and I am talking about the Joker. But specifically, I am talking about the Joker from the Arkham Asylum games. Because he's played by Mark Hamill, who just can bring out something in the Joker's voice that like no other actor that plays Joker can.
That laugh gives me goosebumps every time.
Yes, and it's so good to the point where like I loved like playing and like knowing the Joker's that like even though he's almost like I don't know what the opposite of like a spirit guide is, but like he's like the little shoulder devil, you know, that he's constantly talking to Batman, but when you're playing the game, you almost feel like you can feel that relationship. You're like, oh, this freaking guy. But you like don't want Joker, like you want to defeat him, but you also don't want him anything bad to happen to him because you feel like you're Batman, where you're like, you got to keep him alive and just put him in jail. And so when he does end up, spoiler alert, when he does end up dying, I was almost like, well, what are they going to do in the next game? Like the Joker won't be there. But then he was still there. He was a big portion of the game. And I don't know. It's just, I think he's a great villain. He's an enjoyable villain. Even, especially since he is this scrawny little guy who Batman could beat in a fight any day with all of his arms tied together. Batman could just fall on him and probably beat him. But the Joker just can. He thinks so much differently than anyone else that he can do stuff.
Fair. I was going to get really mad at you if you said Jared Leto's Joker, because just no. But I will
actually. I will defend Jared Leto's Joker. I won't get into that, but I think it's not my favorite portrayal, but I don't hate it as much as the internet does.
That's fair. He does have the creep factor of Joker.
The mobster factor is what I liked. Yeah. He was really he was gangbanging, 100%. Like he had Rico charges up the wall, but
so I'll give Jared Leto and that Joker their props, but Heath Ledger will always hold the spot in my heart for the Joker. Which, sidetrack again, I just saw that it's been 13 years since he passed away, and I just got really sad because
it's been a long time.
It's been so long, and to know that it was while he was filming the Batman series with, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name.
Christopher Nolan's
Dark
Knight trilogy.
Yeah,
Christian
Bale. That's who I was trying to think of.
Oh, I thought you were talking about never mind.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Both of them was gonna work. But it was he holds that special space in my heart. Wow, I can't talk today, and I apologize for that. So my number 2 villain, if any of you watch Supernatural, if any of you have the anti-demon possession tattoo or necklace or anything, I absolutely hated this character, but also he did good things. So I was like, I don't fully want you dead, but also stop being evil. So he's on that balance of truly evil is Metatron. He was an angel. He was technically God's scribe, and he decided that he was better than God, and he was going to come down on Earth and help all of the people. And let's just say he was a dick, and he was a bigger dick than the rest of the angels. And he turned the angels bad, even more bad than they already were, and locked Castiel out of heaven at one point, and tortured the Winchesters, and and eventually ended up killing Dean with the Demon Blade, which was the
spoilers for the show that's been on TV forever.
Listen, it's either going to be Dean or Sam that dies at the end of every season, okay? And then they come back because one of them does something stupid, I don't know, let's sell my soul to the... Yeah, I could get on a tangent about that all the time. But also, Metatron brought about Demon Dean, which, a lot of people absolutely love, even though he was a demon and it was Dean Winchester. But also that was thanks to the Mark of Cain, which Cain, side note again, was played by the guy who plays Lassie on Psych.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he had long hair, and it was I love him. Anyways,
I just think of Tom Welling's Cain from Lucifer.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so Metatron is my number 2 villain, and I hate him, but not enough to want him dead until he kills Dean. So, yeah.
Nice. Also, he sounds a lot speaking of Lucifer, he sounds a lot like what they did with Michael in Lucifer.
We could go on about how Michael is the villain as well to bring about the apocalypse.
No, we won't go into that one. I do know that arc of Supernatural as well. So rounding it out, I'm going to give quick my list of honorable mentions and then my number 1. So my honorable mentions, starting with Cyrus from Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. The Pokemon villains always seem a little campy, but he was the most impressive. Also, sorry if there's background noise. My apartment is right next to the train tracks, and right now there's an exceptionally loud train. And
do you live across the street from me? Because I live right next to the train tracks as well.
We can discuss this after the episode, but maybe. So if I'm shaking or you hear anything, it's the train.
Mm-hmm.
But so Cyrus from Pokemon, I feel the villains always end up kind of campy. Besides Giovanni, but Maxie and Archie, they're kind of ridiculous, and then Ghetsis just seems crazy. Lysander is just like a sociopath, but like Cyrus seemed to have like a defined goal, and something. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to get into like details of this, but anyway, then my other one is Thanos from the MCU specifically, but he didn't make the list because of all of Thanos' other appearances. Reverse Flash from the comics, Scar from The Lion King, and Syndrome from The Incredibles. Those are my honorable mentions. But my number one pick overall.
Was Syndrome in the second one?
Syndrome was the first one.
Yeah. Capes.
Oh, because
no capes.
Okay, now I remember, because I was like, no, it said like BS. No, it just said S. I got it. It's clicked. We're good. Sorry.
So my number one all-time favorite villain is the Joker. So Isaac, we did have overlap on our lists. We talked about that before, and like, I wonder if we're gonna have any overlap. But mine is the Joker, but I'm not specific to any like incarnation. Heath Ledger's Joker is amazing. The DC animated universe Joker, also voiced by Mark Hamill, is amazing. The 1980s Batman film, played by Jack. Which one's the golfer? Which one's the actor? Nicholson. Yeah, Nicholas is the golfer. All like exceptional, but then like comic book Joker from Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, all very distinct and different characters, but all of them like exceptional foils to Batman. And all of them like has the chaotic energy I love in a villain, that he's evil just because that's how he wants to be. He does not care about anyone else, and that's it. And I don't feel like there's much more to say, because I feel like everyone knows the Joker, and everyone knows that he's like the epitome of like if Batman's the epitome of what it is to be a hero, then Joker is the epitome of what it is to be a villain. And that's like, I feel really strongly about that, and I won't go on too much, but that's what it is.
It's not about the money. It's about sending a message.
I love the TikTok audio they've been using from the movie recently, where it's like, you think you can come in here and steal from us? Yeah. Like, he just goes, yes. Like, what? Why wouldn't I be able to?
All right. So we did have a nice little overlap thing. So I had a few runner-ups. One of them was Darth Sidious, but specifically from the prequels. In the main, the original trilogy, yeah, he's evil, but he's just kind of an evil old man. In the sequel trilogy, he was added in there. But in the prequel trilogy, you literally see him pulling the strings, and you get so mad at him. Sorry, I shouldn't get too far into this.
But specifically in Clone Wars, like that drove it home. It's like, oh, he's the puppet master.
I meant like everything before the thing. Yeah, just, oh man, Clone Wars. He's awful. Every time you see him, you know he's bad the whole time. Okay, sorry. Ganondorf from Legend of Zelda. I think he's a great villain, mostly because he's like, in every Zelda game, it's almost always a different Link and a different Zelda, but it's almost always the same Ganondorf. Homeboy just keeps getting brought back to life. Let's see, runner-up, Homelander from The Boys.
Good. Okay. Oh, dang, he is such a good villain.
That's a different episode. We'll do a different episode.
We'll talk. We can just talk about The Boys. Once they give us more season 3 info, we can talk about that.
Benson Ackles.
And then I also mentioned Killmonger from Black Panther, just because I think he's a great villain in that, like, you can almost be like, oh yeah, he's kind of got a point, like kind of like Magneto. He's a very Magneto-esque character. Okay, so my number one, which is, we just kind of switched our 1 and 2 there, Brendan, is Dolores Umbridge.
Okay.
From Harry Potter. Because a lot of it though is because when I was reading it, when I was watching it, it just sent me so many flashbacks of like actual teachers I had growing up, actual like people in my life. And I know that J.K. Rowling said like that I think she was actually based on someone too that J.K. Rowling knew. And just like it evokes that like real life person where like villains can be everyday people. And it's like, I don't know, like treating kids wrong. Like saying that you're a liar when you're not. All these like aspects make you so mad. The book made me like every page. I was just I never wanted to throw a book before in my life, just reading about how awful this teacher is. Like, I'm like, I don't care about Voldemort. Like, yeah, let Voldemort do his thing. He's nothing compared to Dolores Umbridge. Why is she in a school? And I, like Hope said, I was very upset when I found out that the Centaurs did not kill her and her racist pink coat and all her kittens.
Dumbledore could have not rescued her, and she would have just been there. So
yes.
Dumbledore's fault.
And the reason that she's my number one is like, normally I can also appreciate a villain, which is like all my other villains I appreciate. I like all of them, but I hate Umbridge. And it takes a lot for me to actually hate a character. It's kind of like, she's kind of like, it's almost the point where it's kind of like Joffrey from Game of Thrones, where like the portrayal was so good at making you not like the character that even like the actor and actress got like flack from people. And you have to be like, whoa, one's a character, that they performed well. So there it is.
Nice. I respect
Take it home, Hope.
I'll say, don't hate on the kittens, except for the little white fluffy one that was like, I gotta go tell Dolores that, people are trying to use the flu system out of her office. Because, also, kittens. Don't hurt my cats. So, my honorable mentions, number 1, Dolores Umbridge. We're going to leave it there. Ultron, because he creeped me out so much. And especially when he started doing the demented version of I've Got No Strings, I was just like, no, we're done. We're
Honestly,
done.
I think the creep factor came mostly from the voice actor.
Yeah, James Spader.
James Spader did an amazing job as Ultron. That was so cool.
Winter Soldier, although he has redemption, and I will claim to this day that he is now a hero. So he was Winter Soldier and Bucky are different because Winter Soldier was Hydra, voice crack, Hydra, and Bucky is hero. And don't anyone hurt my Bucky. This is a throwback, but the bounty hunter from Race to Witch Mountain with small Dwayne Johnson and baby Anna Sophia Robb.
Small Dwayne Johnson.
He was not bulked. He still had hair and he was instead
Still
of
bench press any of us.
Yeah, because he still bench press my freaking car.
This was after he was The Rock. This was around that era. So small Dwayne Johnson, okay? But yeah, baby Anna Sophia Robb and baby Alexander Ludwig as the aliens that looked like teenagers. But the bounty hunter, you just see the suit all the time. And then when the helmet gets ripped off, it looks like a giant brain with eyes. And it was creepy as heck as a kid. Still creepy and disgusting to this day. Yin and Yang from Psych.
Yeah.
And learning that Yang was Yin's daughter, I was like, nope, that's not a thing. And also honorable mention Killmonger, because one, Michael B. Jordan, but also you empathized with him. You were like, this is understandable.
Killmonger wasn't wrong.
Yeah. So my number 1 villain, who I believe is truly evil, is Cypher from The Fate of the Furious.
Ooh, I thought
played by Charlize Theron, and she's supposed to come back in the next movie, I believe, bringing in John Cena as the brother of Mia and Dom, and it's and he's supposed to be evil, and so that's going to be really interesting. But they're supposed to be working together. But what makes her truly evil for me is baby Brian, and I do mean the actual baby, Dom's son, is going to have so much emotional and mental trauma as he grows up, and he's not going to know why, because he was held captive by someone he didn't know. His mother was killed in front of him, and he couldn't go reach his father to get comforted. Yeah, there was just a lot of... Cypher can die in the next movie, and I will be totally happy as long as she dies a fiery blaze of death. because you should not torture babies like that.
Fun psych fact: due to neuronal pruning, they're probably unless there was like a nutritional developmental issue, nothing will happen to baby Brian. He'll be totally fine because won't probably not have any of the same synapses he had at that time.
I hope so, because listen, if baby Brian ends up with trauma, I'm going to be talking to the directors because, but yeah. And then also the fact that, like, Dom couldn't hold his son after finding out he had a son and, like, watching his son's mother die and not being able, I was like, there's so much psychological, like, torture in this movie.
And the whole manipulation, keeping Dom away from Letty and the rest of the gang. That aspect of it, they're all thinking he's the villain when he had to be turned.
And little nobody's just like, well, he's a bad guy, and the rest of the team's like, listen, Dom's not a bad guy. There has to be a reason why Dom is doing this. So yeah, yeah. So Cypher, in my opinion, is truly evil, and she is my number one villain. So
perfect. Alrighty, so before we sign off today, we just want to give some quick recommendations, as always, here on Raving Geeks, whether that be movies, video games, comics, books, or anything else geeky. Hope, do you want to start with just some quick recommendations for us today?
Yes, I had one. Okay, it's Heroes. That's what it was. I was going to recommend Heroes because honestly, it's a cool series and like sci-fi, and then also Heroes Reborn and bringing in Zachary Levi as like a villain character. Like, it's really good. It's got a lot of well-known characters like Zachary Quinto plays Sylar. So if you like him as Spock in the new Star Trek series, you should watch it where he is a villain because he does a phenomenal job. Absolutely phenomenal.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Isaac, do you have any recommendations for us?
My recommendation is the Disney board game Villainous. It is a fantastic game. It's the first just like basic box is you can have any 2 to 6 players. It is you play as a villain. You have this little board, everyone has their own little board, and basically you have a goal that you have to beat. Like Jafar is you have to have the genie on your side at the palace. And like it's all like card based and like turn based. Everyone has the thing. Ursula has to defeat Ariel, or King Triton and get the trident. They all have their own little goal. So everyone picks a villain, and then in your turn, you can do things where you like fate other characters, and basically you cause other characters like heroes to appear to fight them. And it's fantastic. It can take anywhere from, like 45 minutes to like 2 hours a game because they're so long and big. But what's cool is that there's expansion packs with even more Disney villains. There's the core 6, and then there's new ones. There's like Yzma or Radigan from The Great Mouse Detective, all these different people. And then now there is a Marvel Villainous game where you play as one of the 6 different villains from Marvel. And it's just a really fun game. Everyone should check it out. It's kind of expensive, but check it out.
Which villains do they have in the Marvel version?
In the Marvel version, they have Ultron, Hela. They have, I'm trying to remember, Thanos, of course.
Isn't he on the cover of that box?
Yeah, you are correct. Loki's on the back, but he's not in the game anywhere. So we're hoping for expansion. So yeah. Then we got, why can't I think of it? Killmonger. And then the last one is, they only have 5. And the last one is Taskmaster, which I thought would do spoilers for the new movie, but actually they go off of comics for a lot of the heroes. Yeah, they go off comics. There is stuff from the movies.
Taskmaster's an interesting one to do.
Yes.
Alrighty. So my recommendations for this week. If any of you have ever seen the movie Prisoners, I highly recommend that if you haven't seen it. That came out, probably like 10 years ago now. Very good movie. It's got Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. And it's like a mystery crime thriller about what a father's willing to do to find his missing daughter and her friend. And it's a really interesting psychological thriller. I also would like to recommend any books by the author Khaled Hosseini. My favorite book. He is my favorite author of all time, and I didn't know if I had recommended him yet on the podcast, so I would. I wanted to do that. You might have read a book of his, The Kite Runner, in high school. That I know that's on some people's reading lists. And then my last recommendation is the animated movie Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. Can't find it. I eventually found it online, but I don't know like what streaming service has it now since DC Universe got canceled and they were supposed to have it and yada yada yada. But it's rated R. It's like a rated R DC animated movie, and it was really intense and really graphic. And if that's not your thing, don't watch it. But if you like, it gives off similar vibes to Endgame for the MCU, but for the DC animated universe. So hope to have a hand raised.
Yeah, I remember the thing that I was going to recommend. It's the movie called The Losers, which, talking about villains, you would expect if they were the losers that, might be a villain side, right? No, it's essentially like a task force is outed and then deemed as prisoner or as villains. And it stars Idris Elba, Zoe Saldana, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Chris Evans. It's a
lot of big names.
Yeah, it's stacked. And let me tell you, Chris Evans as a dorky nerd wearing glasses is
pre-serum Steve.
Well, but he's bulked up, so like not quite pre-serum Steve, but it's adorable and hilarious, and the movie is fantastic, and it has action, and there's a little bit of romance because Zoe Saldana's character and Jeffrey Dean Morgan have like this little romance thing. So it's a good Valentine's Day movie too. But yeah, I would recommend The Losers. It's phenomenal.
That's the one where Chris Evans does this thing and yes, okay. Yes. I was like Chris Evans as a nerd with glasses. I was like, I remember.
And he gets he's in an elevator changing his clothes and he's changing his pants and the elevator doors stop and open up to a bunch of women. And my favorite quote out of the entire movie is like in the angle of the dangle, ladies.
And on that note, that is all we have for you today. Thank you for joining us on Raving Geeks. Make sure you leave a comment wherever you're listening from. We'd love to hear from you and on your thoughts of what we talked about today and anything you want to us to talk about in the future. Also, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter at Raving Geeks. And as always, I have been Brendan Valentine along with my other co-hosts.
Hope Gooderl.
Isaac Hunter.
And stay geeky and have a great weeky, everyone. So long.